Kingsman: The Secret Service first hit our screens back in 2014, and it was a surprise and a big hit. The spy action comedy had it all: a superb cast, a superb story, action, adventure, comedy, over the top violence, satire, parody, ludicrous plot, and pure escapist fun. The follow up, Kingsman: The Golden Circle, certainly amped up the fun and madness, but it failed to live up to the first film, instead going even more over the top, but still managing to play it safe with a similar format and style that eventually just became tiring and predictable to watch. Now we have the release of The Kingsman. This prequel takes us back to the origin of the Secret Service, and well, this film really misses the mark. Like the previous films, it has all the ingredients to make a fantastic movie, and the same people behind the camera from the first two, but the execution leaves far too much to be desired. Now, the story begins with Ralph Fiennes' character, Orlando, Duke of Oxford, who is working with his family in the Red Cross in South Africa during the Boer War. During an ambush, he is injured and his wife gets killed. Before she dies, she makes Oxford promise to protect their young son from the horrors of the world. We then fast forward to just before the outbreak of World War I. Oxford's son Conrad is now a young man who is very keen and eager to get out from under his father's wing and explore the world on his own. Helping the overly protective Orlando watch out for his son are two of his closest servants, Polly and Shola. What unfolds as our plot begins to take shape are two opposing sides across Europe. One side trying to create a war to destabilise and conquer the empires and the continent, and the others trying to prevent it. Now, this is where the movie begins to come apart. World War I, or the Great War, is a difficult subject to tackle well. The war was the biggest shift in empires and landscape that we had ever seen to that point. Old long-standing empires were beginning to fall and be challenged by new and capable up-and-coming powers. There were huge political shifts in ideologies, and taking place that would shape the world for decades. It was the first war where charging our enemies in daring and dashing romantic clashes were replaced with years-long stalemate in hellish conditions, pinned down and under fire from the new monsters of industrialised warfare such as machine guns, mustard gas, huge mortar shells, tanks and aircraft. There is little in the way of footage of movies and television which we have to look back on with the Great War. However, when this is done, it is usually done with great care. The war certainly touches something deep down in many of us, especially in Europe, more so than many of our other conflicts. However, it's usually overshadowed by the Second World War, which is more in living memory, and with so much more footage and memorable figures, and movies and television shows, it keeps it more fresh and more focused in our minds. So, tackling this part of history and inserting a fictional story within it certainly won't be easy. The problem the movie has is that history is easy to predict, so right off the bat we struggle with any sense of stakes, tension, build-up, set-up and payoff, as we already know what's going to happen, especially as you're trying to tie it in so closely with reality. The problem is that if you don't know your history too well, then some audience members may be forgiven for thinking that more of this is true than it actually is. If you do know your history, then it's hard to take it seriously, even as just entertainment to lose yourself in and feel that wonder of anticipation of what's coming next. Now, I was getting flashbacks of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen while watching this, but this story got away with it on the basis that those characters are fictional creations already known to us. Therefore, this alternative history can easily be accepted for what it is, entertaining fiction as those rules are already established and self-evident. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen also took place before the war and left out many real-life names and events which helped us become engrossed in fiction while respecting the timeline and those within it. Now, Titanic did something similar. The main story of our two characters was clearly fiction. However, the real-life people and events around the peripherals were respectful and faithfully portrayed. However, The Kingsman tries to have it both ways, inserting historical fiction within historical facts, and in doing so, disrespecting important people and our heritage. The previously mentioned films also had time frame to work towards. Europe was headed for war and there was a race to stop it, and on the other hand we had a sinking ship that followed the fight to survive the disaster before it was too late. The story and timeline was tight and we had a clear sense of urgency and time frame. However, here in The Kingsman, the goal constantly moves further and further away with our heroes failing each step of the way. The film focuses itself as a possible history, which of course we know it isn't. Characters like Rasputin, the Tsars, Kaiser Wilhelm and King George were all real people, and some historical nods are thrown in for us, but their portrayals were underwhelming and disrespectful, and it feels like some big opportunities were missed. Ralph Fiennes' overly protective father also fails to hit the mark. Here is an attempt to get across the father-son bond overshadowed by the mother's death years before. However, instead of keeping with the current time of which it is set, Fiennes' character comes across as emasculated, weak and fretful, instead of being the stern, stiff upper-lipped Englishman that not only was more common, but would also make more sense considering the threats that our heroes face up to in the story. He does have a good arc eventually and does well as our hero, but unfortunately this overshadows his son role in the film. You can see what the filmmakers were going for here, but it feels like a misfire that gets us invested for nothing and telegraphs its own outcome. There is, however, a plot hole here in which the manner of how the good and bad side operate as servants to the world leaders. This could have seen them reach conflict and stalemate behind closed doors in the halls of power, and not just on the battlefield. This is a hugely missed opportunity that could have led to much more deeply rooted storylines and tension, and this would have rung all too true and would have added some realism given the nature of politics. There could have been some room for cloak and dagger subplots, some mystery, tension, stakes and drama as the war reaches all fronts, but no. What we're given is an already established spy network of which we have no reference to, no characters to follow, and in which their enemies are also working within but so far haven't been discovered or faced off with. I mean, if you're so close to that much power and have an agenda to work for, then how could you not find yourself in conflict with others who are also in the same workplace, who have their own contradictory agenda and not suffer a conflict of interests? The problem here is that we are simply told and shown that there are agents in all places, instead of being more actively involved in any journey that manoeuvre these people into their positions. Coming from such small organisations which are still largely not formed of any structure, in turn points out to the film's bad pacing and structure in itself. I mean, how could such small new groups with limited resources achieve so much in such little time? Well, who knows? And the movie takes place over some 16 years, but there is next to nothing to follow this journey and timeline without expecting help from the viewer, and considering how much liberty the movie takes with the past, how they expect younger demographics to know fact from fiction is the big question. If your story is to function, then there must be a clearer beginning, middle and end with some sense of working towards a goal and with some time frame to achieve it. If not, or if your story doesn't require it, then at least we can show this sheer collateral damage as a result of the time it is taken to accomplish our goal, to help create some urgency, but here that just seems absent. Some twists do occur, and some are obvious and some a bit more unexpected. There was only one moment that seemed to capture the audience as some emotional connection. However, upon reflection, it's unclear whether the point here was to highlight the harsh reality and pointless nature of war, or to antagonise the audience by building us up to what was ultimately a pointless journey and investment. The tragedy, all in the name of, was something so frivolous and obtained in such an unbelievable way, it's actually hard to remember what it even was. The assassination missions each side go on are also pointless. Opportunities to succeed in the ultimate goals present themselves, but nobody takes them, especially the shepherd himself. Security and guards don't exist to allow the action set pieces to happen, which again doesn't add any atmosphere or stakes around our important figures and the monarchs who are the targets. All of these factors overall help detract from a solid sense of world building, which seems wild and random and undermines its own attempts to build up the stakes. The big end goal of bringing the Americans into the war to help them end it happened so quickly it serves as an anticlimax. However, in the movie's defence, the casting is spot on, with perhaps only one or two questionable parts, but this is also due to the story and script the actors are given. Ralph Fiennes is on top form and delivers a superb protagonist. Supporting actors Jimon Honsu, Gemma Arterton, Charles Dance and Matthew Good all deliver great performances too. It's just a shame that the screenplay and story fails to meet up to their standard. The Kingsman is a perfectly fine and average fun film, but ultimately it comes up short and serves as a lesson of how to undermine your own story, its very point, the key people and moments, and in turn disrespect the audience who you're asking to get involved in it. It also shows us how not to handle an alternative take on history. By all means, have fun with history. Tell it, explore it, reimagine it. Just do so within clear and well-defined rules of your genre, and try to respect the individuals, especially if they actually existed, and if you're trying to bring fact and fiction closer together. So that's my review on The Kingsman. If you enjoyed the video, please consider a like, share and subscribe for more content. You can find ways to support the channel below. And until the next video, take care.